Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. I have a brand new guest. I have Charles Buchanan-Boardman on. Right now, he's a senior accountant with the goal of becoming a financial planner. What we're going to talk about is his great aunt's employee gaining power of attorney and taking all of his father's inheritance. In brief, there were a lot of people who wanted their money. The home care worker became the personal assistant of the employee with power of attorney after his great aunt's death. And we're going to talk about this because apparently this is somehow coming into a common practice with a lot of people's estates. So I welcome you to the show, Charles. I'm very sorry this happened. Um, let's talk about it.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. It was a very devastating circumstance to my family. Our lifestyle completely changed, flipped from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. Just some brief background. When growing up, we lived at my great aunt's house in Las Vegas. We grew up in an environment where there was a maid and a cook in the house, a guard at the guard gate, and we had a sense of feeling of safety with our family's money. And we got to do exciting things. We got to meet celebrities. My family knew Frank Sinatra and his cousin's wife. His cousin was his band director. His cousin's wife was Prima Sinatra. Prima Sinatra actually came to one of my birthday parties as a guest. It was very interesting childhood growing up in Las Vegas. But in the 1990s, my great aunt went on a cruise, and she picked up a piano player on the cruise. The piano player was helping her to record some music. She wanted to get on the radio and stuff like that. She was interested in the industry, so he was supposed to help her with that. He had been recorded as an employee. She also owned, she lived in Las Vegas, but she also owned a vacation resort and an island in Montana. And he helped her with the vacation resort. They had a restaurant there too that he was involved in. But as she got older, unfortunately, we found out when it was too late that she had dementia, that she had been diagnosed with dementia, and it got so very severe that in the end she wasn't even able to uh, eat food, which is just unbelievably, painful for someone to have to go through. But unfortunately, she experienced abuse during those final years. And when it was too late, we had found out that that the employee had gained power of attorney, and the power of attorney case was sealed with the court. So we had no knowledge of it whenever it was taking place. And the employee also later married her, and as power of attorney, he started pulling all her assets out of her trust and moving them into his name as half owner with quitclaim deeds, with half owner with rights of survivorship. So based on that move, whenever she was to die, all her assets would automatically become his, and the will would not, the will would not even matter, because there wouldn't be anything left to flow through the will. But we did, when she died, the law firm that drafted her will naming my father as half heir of the estate brought the will forward. My brother had obtained the will, and I had obtained the will of her prior husband, my great uncle that inherited all this wealth. So I have a trail of who would have inherited. Basically, my brothers and I would have each had a sixth share in the inheritance, but because the employee with power of attorney moved everything into his name, then there wasn't anything left. It all reverted to him based on those moves that he made without our knowledge. And in the final years when she was dying of dementia, my family was not allowed to visit her without the guardian that had power of attorney present, because he had claimed that we were trying to build a case, and he didn't want her to be able to speak with my family alone.
And that seems to be a pattern with these power of attorneys slash guardianships, is they want, supervised visits, control over what's being done and said in the room.
Yes, yes, it's extremely unfortunate. An ideal situation would have been to have the family involved in the process in designating a power of attorney rather than giving it to the person who was uh, petitioning and not even involving the family. That was one thing that made it very difficult for us. And if we had been more active in running the estate when she was of sound mind before she had dementia, that probably would have helped the situation much more, because we would have been involved in daily activities and would have seen what was transpiring. But we did not find out until it was too late, until after the assets had been transferred.
But even though, like you said before, things got really bad, I mean, this power of attorney could have been signed then. Even when things were going good, it could have been signed without anyone knowing.
Yes, yes, it was. I think it was a gradual decline in her health, because when we were young and when we lived with her, there were no signs of dementia, and the employee that had gained power of attorney wasn't even in the picture yet. So it moved swiftly, and I don't want to make any allegations, but he was involved in strange alternative medicine, that he would go down to Mexico, and I don't know why, to obtain some sort of medication he couldn't obtain here. And I don't know if she had been poisoned, or if things had been against her favor to make the situation worse. But there's the possibility of that, because and we had wondered about that, because when we knew her, she was perfectly fine, and there was
Mhm.
no signs of that whatsoever.
And you really didn't see this coming at all until, she got really worse.
Yeah, we actually didn't see it coming until after she had been diagnosed with dementia. So in the 1980s and the 1990s, she was perfectly fine. And then in the around the time that she'd been diagnosed in 2005, and she was still rather young. Unfortunately, she didn't live a very full life, but when she had been diagnosed, we had not heard about it. We heard about it probably at least 5 years after, around the time that she had died. So it was complete. We were completely caught off guard and had no knowledge of what was going on.
After her death, could could you have requested an autopsy to see what toxicology was, or these levels possibly could have been in her system?
Yeah, I wanted to do that. Unfortunately, Because we were cut off from the money, it had led to my father filing for bankruptcy.
Mm,
And my parents divorced. We lost our home. The home had been paid for by the family, and so there was no mortgage on the home. My father only had about $20,000 in credit card debts. I think it was less. And he found an attorney that convinced him that he should file for bankruptcy, but there was really no good reason to file for bankruptcy because he could have even taken a second mortgage out on that home. So basically, my mom and I were trying to raise my brother. We were both very low income. We qualified for Pell Grants for college. We were so poor. I was living off of credit cards, working full time, and even a full time student. So as I was finding out this information, I barely even had time to follow up on it because I was sort of wedged in my career and just trying to survive.
mm. You know, all of this is just so unfair. You know, I'm sure you had people coming up to you saying, "Well, what happened?" You know, "What happened to all of this?" You know, and then you were also you walked into a bookstore as she was passing and you found a book.
Yes, yes. The family is very well known. When my family moved to Las Vegas, they moved from California, and when my mother's family moved, my father's family moved sooner in the 1960s, and they had friendships with many headliners. The Rat Pack would literally, after a show, go over to my great aunt and uncle's house and celebrate. There's a lot of famous people that visited there, and they signed tiles in my aunt's kitchen with their favorite recipe. So that's kind of a sign of who ate there. But yeah, it was in the 1971 is when my mother's family moved there. So my entire family had been in Las Vegas by 1971. There was about 250,000 people in Las Vegas in that time. So it wasn't a huge city, and we were one of the wealthier families in the city. But then it eventually completely flipped where the city exploded. There's a incredible amount of people that live in Las Vegas today, and we went from being one of the wealthiest families to probably one of the very poorest families very quickly. So it was a huge contrast. And when she died, I did walk into Barnes and Noble and find a paperback book that discusses a famous apartment building on Park Avenue in Manhattan, and it mentioned my great aunts and uncles lives because his mother lived in that building. Other families, such as the Kennedys, lived in that building as well. But that was very surreal to know that your great aunt's dying, you're losing everything you've had in life, and then you go to the bookstore and you read about it. You can read about it. Pick up a book and read about it. Yeah.
That's just terrible.
Mhm.
You know, so this power of attorney, they're still walking around with all this money, obviously, and, you know, not really caring about what they did to people, what they did to this family.
Yes, yes, that was never a consideration. The individual who did this was only thinking of himself, and we had known him for a little while in the 1990s, but we had no idea what his plans were. Yeah.
It's like you can't trust people who are even caregivers for your family members.
No, no, and that's extremely unfortunate. Well, yeah, not only caregivers, but also other people that worked for her. She had a long list of people who worked for her. She had a lot of employees, and when she passed away, on her memorial site, there were a lot of people that said, "Oh, I worked for her, in the 1970s," or "I worked." She had an island in Montana. There were some people that worked on the island, some people that worked on her house. in Las Vegas, and a lot of them have very fond memories of her because she was very generous in helping people
Mm.
and giving people jobs. But this one individual obviously was looking for money, and that was his purpose. I looked up I looked up unclaimed money with his name, and I noticed that in New Jersey, I think it was, he had unclaimed life insurance funds. And it's kind of strange because he's an immigrant from Italy, and it makes me wonder, who was he connected to in New Jersey where he didn't collect the life insurance money. So I thought that was very strange. And then after that, he had moved to Las Vegas whenever he started working with her.
So it's almost like he had other victims lined up.
It looks like that. It looks like that, and I wish I knew more about that aspect of it. There is allegations that an attorney that worked for her had changed her will and made himself a beneficiary. And there is a investigative journalist in Las Vegas named John Ralston who someone alleged that John Ralston had in his possession both wills, the changed will and the original will, but I have not followed up on that story yet. But it's very interesting because there were very many people who had encountered her who wanted a part of her estate, money, real estate, other things that they wanted from her when she had dementia.
You know, when the original will was made out, there was probably only one executor, whoever she named. Perhaps she should have named two people instead of one.
Yes, and unfortunately, the will was made many years ago. The family dynamics had not changed. She had no children. Her husband had one child, and her will, left half the fortune to my father, and then half of the fortune to the daughter. However, the will was written in 1963, and my attorney, I hired an attorney to inquire about how this could even take place, and he asked if there had been an updated will or a change in family dynamics, and there hasn't, because her only family was her sister, who is now deceased, her nephew, who is now deceased, and her nephew's children. There's no other family. My grandmother only had one child, and my great aunt had 0 children. We were the only family that she had, and
Mm.
none of the family. And the individual that obtained power of attorney sent me an email reiterating that he took everything and that not one member of the family received a penny from the estate. Literally, all we received was a portrait of her, and I received a picture of myself that she had. That's literally all we received.
This should serve as a warning to people when they have a loved one that is being taken care of in their own home. I To watch everything. What advice would you give?
But yes, that's what that has been sort of my life's journey, and that is my goal is to eventually work with people one on one to prevent these circumstances from ever happening, because the impact was so extremely devastating. My mother was a housewife until I was an adult. She had to start a career, and at age 60, she finished her MBA. She's 65 now. She doesn't have a home. She doesn't have a 401k, and she has credit card debt.
Mhm.
So I will have to. That's a very very horrible circumstance of what happens in these situations. And my mother at 65 is essentially starting a career, so she's going to be working well into retirement age because of this. But I've earned an MBA, a master's in real estate, and a master's in financial planning because I wanted to go back, uh, retrace what happened, and figure out how this type of thing could happen
Mhm.
to a family where you had the world at your doorstep, and then you were suddenly locked out of the house,
Mhm.
and you were on the doorstep with absolutely nothing, absolutely nothing to work with. My brothers and I didn't even have high school educations. My last education before college was eighth grade through homeschooling, and I pretty much taught myself. Then my grandfather told me, well, you've got to go to college, you've got to have a career. So he said to pick up a GED review book. I picked up, I was working full time plus a second job whenever I was 17. I mean, that's how devastating this was. My father said that he didn't have money to feed the boys to my mother, and he would get upset at my mother for buying meat at the grocery. So I was working two jobs at 17. I became a swing manager at McDonald's. At 19, I picked up that GED review book, studied it for about 6 months, earned my GED, started college, and then that's when I decided to focus my studies on finance, real estate, and financial planning. So one thing that would have made our circumstance much better would have been if we were involved in the family wealth. And I think, regardless of how much money families have, that the children should be involved. If for instance, if your entire net worth is, half a million or $1 million, then, I think you should help, that parents ought to help their children, gain good skills that will help them to be able to be good stewards of the money in the future, such as, attending college, or, getting some sort of technical training, especially with financial planning, at least understanding the basics, even taking a simple course, like Dave Ramsey's course, for instance, just something like that to understand how to manage money. Because when we were young, my great aunt would offer to buy things for my dad to manage. Like, she offered to buy him an apartment complex for him to manage. And my dad was a little bit scared of that. And he said he didn't want to wake up in the middle of the night to fix someone's plumbing. Well, you know, whenever whenever you have family wealth like that, you need the younger generation to be involved. And it would have been advantageous if my father would have, taken that up. It would have managed the apartment complex, and then at least, at the very least, he would have had a significant stake in managing his inheritance. But, being detached and like spending, the younger generations perhaps spending money and not getting involved in maintaining and growing a fortune is that's I think that's a key element of how these situations get a little bit out of hand. And so I think if we were more involved in being good stewards of the money and the fortune, and knowing how to maintain it and build it for future generations, for children, grandchildren, etc. I think that's would be a major helper. So the families, younger generations, need to be involved with the older generations. And then also another way that benefits is seeing if the relative that controls the estate has any type of mental decline or physical decline. If you work with them on a daily basis and see that their health is starting to decline, that's when the family should go forward and the family should obtain power of attorney. I think if the family is proactive in understanding, what's happening and how to maintain and grow the fortune, then it minimizes the opportunity for an outsider to come in and hijack uh, the whole situation, hijack the whole situation in becoming a guardian for the individual and then taking all their assets too.
Yeah, that is some excellent advice. A lot of people, they don't know these guardianships are going on. Even if you're middle class, people don't know, or they're just unsuspecting, or this won't happen to us until it does.
Yes, 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 because you can scale that at any level, that type of advice, because even, if you're middle class or even lower than middle class, the thing to do is to get your children trained on managing money. I mean, even if your only asset is a house, you want to make sure that your children are good stewards of that house after they pass away, and whatever money is generated from that asset. So it can be, it can even be as low, it can be even be as small as money that remains in a parent's 401k. If you don't even inherit a house, if all you inherit is the money from the 401k, you want to make sure, since that's a one-time windfall, you want to make sure that you're a good steward of it, and that you don't end up in the next year not having that money, even if it's a little bit of money. Personally, what I would do is put it in a CD, because when my dad passed away, we inherited a house that his mother had, because when my father lost his home, he moved in with his mother, and then when he passed away, we received his mother's house, and that's not going to provide us with a lot of money. But my intention is to put that in a CD, because it's literally all we have, and I don't want to lose that money. I want it to be there for if there's some sort of emergency.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I've already been through so many emergencies,
Oh,
and with my dad, gone, with my dad's family, you know, all passed away, they can't help me if something goes wrong. So I've got to put that money in a CD, and I've got to have or a brokerage account, either way, and have it sitting there for whenever I start my own family. I can make sure that if my one of my children has an emergency, there was something that the grandfather left that I would be able to help them with. So.
mhm. Now, are colleges teaching things like this?
Well, you know what? I think whenever it comes to choosing a major, I think it's important to find something technical, because my undergraduate degree is in accounting, and basically with accounting, you take some finance classes, some business classes, and you pretty much learn how to manage a business with an accounting degree. But I earned an MBA, which touched on that further. Earned a master's degree in real estate. The master's degree in real estate touched on some real estate law, so it helped me whenever my father died to understand how to settle his estate with regard to the real estate aspect. I also earned a master's in financial planning, and there's many undergraduate degrees uh, in financial planning that are aligned with the CFP board. The CFP board is the board that provides the credential to certified financial planners, and anyone interested in setting up a trust or managing their money should seek the help of an attorney. and a certified financial planner to ensure that they've taken care of the right, set up their trust properly, and ensure that their money is safe. Those two professionals can help with that, but there's many undergraduate degrees in financial planning that are CFP board endorsed, where it'll contribute to that credential. And those classes that are in that degree program are key in understanding how to protect your assets and how to mitigate these situations with because for instance, my father put his mother's house in a trust, and that with that move, it eliminates probate,
Mhm.
and the heirs, it's very clear who the heirs of that asset are. So that's why I would always seek out the help of an attorney plus a financial planner when planning for an estate. And I would always suggest uh, doing a will and getting all that done, even if you don't have children yet. I'm not married
Mhm.
yet. I don't have children yet, but I worked very hard and bought a townhouse. I put my own townhouse in a trust, and I have a living will and life insurance that says what happens if I die. So if I was to get hit by a Mack truck, today, my mother would inherit my house. It's in the trust, so she would have direct access to it, and she would also be the beneficiary of my life insurance proceeds. And my living will dictates that how I should be buried, and that my life insurance proceeds should cover that. So it's important, and I'm 41, but I think that that regardless of what age you are, if you are starting to obtain some assets, or especially if you have children, that you should set up a will. And if you have an asset like a house, in certain circumstances, it would be appropriate to put it in a trust. And I would seek the help of an attorney and a certified financial planner to ensure that it's done properly, so that way if something happens to you, it's not it doesn't have to go through the probate process, and there isn't any dubious gray area as to who would inherit the assets. There is, of course, if there's intestate probate without a will, there is a hierarchy of how the state addresses that, and generally assets go to children, but it's much safer to be proactive in addressing that while you're still alive.
These guardianships, I've talked to several guests I've had on, Dr. Sam Sugar and Rick Black. And a lot of them are saying that once you're in a guardianship, you can't get out.
Yeah, it's a horrible situation. Las Vegas is very notorious for this situation. We were born and raised in Las Vegas. My great aunt lived in Las Vegas. But whenever I started researching guardianships, I found out that that is actually a common problem in Las Vegas. And personally, I think that politicians need to step in and be advocates for families, because it's far too easy for a complete outsider to move in and hijack family assets. And families need to have more involvement. They need to have a greater say. But I personally believe that politicians need to become advocates for families in this matter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, um, I don't want to keep you all morning. Is there is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I would just say, no, my journey has been, studying financial planning, real estate transactions and stuff like that. I would always keep an eye on fraud. Like I check my credit report frequently, make sure that that your credit report is clean and that no one is trying to use identity theft to get your assets. I would say, work with an attorney and a financial planner to make sure that you're proactive in setting up your estate planning. But also, I would keep an eye on elderly family members and make sure that if their health starts to decline, that you follow up and that you proactively, seek to be their guardian. The guardian should be a family member, I
Mhm.
think, and that's what we must do. We must protect our assets, keep an eye out for elderly family members, and we must be actively involved in family wealth, especially children, especially
Mhm.
the children of parents. They must be involved before someone else comes into the picture, and especially in circumstances when families get complex through divorce and remarriage and stuff like that, that becomes very difficult. I've researched my genealogy and I found out that my great 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 grandfather had the same issue. His parents had been divorced, and my great 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 grandfather, who died in 1921, literally had to sue in court to get his inheritance. So this type of thing is not new. This type of thing runs through generations. And as family dynamics get complex and people live to be older, but they, end up with these horrible diseases like dementia, then, people need to be proactive, aware, and involved in their family members' lives.
That's excellent advice, and I'm so glad I had you on here to talk about this because this is y people think it's new and upcoming, but it's been around a long time,
Hmm. Yes,
you know?
it's been my pleasure to tell my story because my goal is to bring awareness to this, and my goal is to eventually become a financial planner and to help people one-on-one protect their
Mhm,
assets and also protect their family members. Because when an outsider obtains power of attorney, that's sort of also abuse to the elderly person, and you don't know if they're being cared for properly.
mhm,
In my family circumstance, where the home care worker eventually became the personal assistant of the individual with the power of attorney, that doesn't look good because, was she really a genuine home care worker? Was she really taking care of my great aunt as she was dying? And what are the circumstances where a home care worker becomes the personal assistant of the guardian afterwards?
mhm,
That's sort of in and of itself, it appears to be unethical, but you kind of wonder what the relationship was all along, and if my great aunt, when she had dementia, had been mistreated.
mhm. Right, because you don't know because you had these supervised visits if you were even allowed them.
Yes, yes. It was very limited circumstances in which we were even allowed to see her or communicate with her.
Mm. Well, if people have any questions, how can they reach you?
Well, uh, they can reach me at my email address. My email address is Buchanan-Boardman. That's Buchananboardman at yahoo.com, and I can be reached there.
And you're also on LinkedIn, Is that
Yes,
yeah?
yes. My name is Charles Buchanan-Boardman, and I do have a LinkedIn account.
Okay.
I can be reached there.
I'll put that in the podcast notes. So hey, don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. And please join us again here with Charles in the future, because I'd like to have you come back on
Thank you.
and we will talk again and other exciting guests. Thank you again, Charles.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Mine too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.